This week on The Watchman, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee joins us in Jerusalem to tell us about his new weekly TBN show and why Christians must stand with Israel now more than ever.
Just as it says in Ezekiel 37, the dry bones live again. You only can explain Israel in the context of God has his hand on this country.
Plus, he's been kidnapped, beaten, and had his life threatened by ISIS. Yet that hasn't stopped his tireless work for the persecuted Christians of the Middle East. Meet the man they call the Vicar of Baghdad. This week on The Watchman, only with Christians United for Israel and only on TBN. And welcome to The Watchman. We are wrapping up a long, hot summer when it comes to national security, as ISIS lost ground in the Middle East and was weakened in Iraq and Syria. It lashed out right here in the West. From Britain to France to Spain, we saw ISIS and its followers carry out several deadly terrorist attacks across Europe. At the same time, North Korea has put the world on edge by testing intercontinental ballistic missiles and threatening to strike the United States. Now, the latest outburst by Kim Jong-un and terrorist rampages like we saw recently in Barcelona capture the world's attention, and for good reason. Yet there is another imminent threat to America, Israel, and the world that is not getting nearly enough attention. I'm talking about Iran. The Iranian regime continues to develop and test ballistic missiles in violation of UN resolutions. And just as its close ally North Korea, Iran seeks to have an intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, capability that would enable it to strike the United States. It's no wonder that Iran and North Korea have such a tight strategic alliance. These two rogue regimes share a common hatred for America. When it comes to Israel, however, the Iranian threat is even more serious and immediate. Iran's goal is to create a land corridor from Tehran all the way to the Mediterranean Sea and completely surround Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned about this Iranian expansion recently during a meeting with the UN Secretary General.
Iran is busy turning Syria into a base of military entrenchment, and it wants to use Syria and Lebanon as war fronts against its declared goal to eradicate Israel. It is also building sites to produce precision-guided missiles towards that end in both Syria and in Lebanon. This is something Israel cannot accept. This is something the UN should not accept.
Folks, the Iranian regime's goal is to create a vise of terror that can squeeze Israel from all sides. And as the world sleeps, Iran is having great success with this strategy. That's just another reason that it is so important for you to join our movement here at Christians United for Israel. We are America's largest pro-Israel organization with over 3.5 million Bible-believing Christians standing in the gap for God's people and God's land. For Zion's sake, we will not remain silent when Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, and other terrorist groups threaten Israel's existence. You see the website and the phone number there on your screen, so join us. And remember, the same forces that seek to wipe Israel off the map have a bullseye on the back of the United States. Well, one man who has never hesitated to stand up boldly for Israel is Governor Mike Huckabee. I sat down with the Fox News contributor and former Republican presidential candidate recently in Jerusalem, where we talked about the need for Christians to support Israel and the governor's new show coming soon right here to TBN. Take a look. What a time for us to be here in Jerusalem. 50-year anniversary this year of the reunification of God's city. Tell us what that means to you.
Well, it means that prophecy is being fulfilled. God is truly at work in this world, and I don't know of any place where he's more active than in the Middle East. I think it's hard for a lot of people to get their arms around the fact that Israel has been a country that is explained only in the context of a miracle. The desert has truly bloomed. Areas that were nothing but desolate and dry and dusty and rocky now have vegetation, and they're growing fruits and vegetables for export. And just as it says in Ezekiel 37, the dry bones live again. So you see life in this country. And now it is a vibrant economy. It is high tech. It is medical technology on the cutting edge. Many of the things that we enjoy in the United States come from this. You only can explain Israel in the context of God has his hand on this country. And the 50th anniversary of the reunification of the Jewish capital, the ancestral home capital of the Jews, is really genuinely a miracle.
And Governor, on that note, why is it so important that Jerusalem remain undivided? There's a lot of talk now at the UN, the EU about dividing the city. Why is it so important to remain united here in Jerusalem?
You can't cut Jerusalem in half without killing Jerusalem. Jerusalem is an amazing and unique city, but it's the city which has only been capital and the home and seat of government for one people, the Jewish state. It's never been the capital of anybody else.
3,000 years.
3,000 years, going back, to the time of the Old Testament when King David came here. And I mean, it is just a remarkable place. But it also, if you just took it in its modern context, even if I was not a biblical believer, which I am, but if I wasn't, and I just looked at Jerusalem from a modern context, I would ask this question: who will preserve not only the antiquities of the Jews, but of the Muslims and the Christians? Israel will. They do it every day.
Governor, this is the one place in the region where there is actually freedom of worship, and Jews and Christians can worship freely at the Western Wall of the Temple Mount, which is sacred to not only Jews but Christians as well.
You can be a Jew and have nothing to do with Christianity. You cannot be a Christian without having everything to do with all of Judaism, because the very foundation of New Testament belief and New Testament faith in Christ, is built upon the foundation of the Old Testament and Judaism. Jesus, people forget, he was a Jew. And everything that I read in the Old Testament, I believe. There's nothing in the Old Testament that I say, well, that's not true. So if I embrace the Old Testament, it's easier for me to embrace the New Testament. And frankly, I can't be a Christian believer without embracing both the Old and the New Testaments.
And Governor, how exciting. We're here now. We're able to walk the land where it all unfolded, where the Bible came to life. What amazing times we live in. Hey, you know what? Over the past 8 years, a bit of a rocky ride for U.S.-Israel relationship, at least at the governmental level. We have a new sheriff in town, a new president in the U.S. Are you optimistic? Do you see good things moving forward for the U.S.-Israel relationship?
I really do, Eric. I think what we're already seeing is that there is like a collective sigh of relief in Israel. This relationship that we have with Israel is strategically important. For 8 years, we basically treated our friend like an enemy, and we treated our enemy, Iran, as if it were a friend, and we trusted them with the most insane agreement that the United States has ever entered into. So I don't think that the relationship now is that the Israeli government says, oh boy, now we can get what we want out of the Americans. Actually, they probably can't. But what they know is the Americans aren't going to sell them out. They're not going to do something like the ridiculous UN resolution that was very, very insulting and frankly just inexplicable, that happened just before the previous administration left office.
Insanity.
We're not going to be signing Iranian deals that allow them to build up a nuclear weapon. We're going to hold them in check and create a balance of peace. Eric, that's not just good for Israel, that's good for Saudi Arabia, for Jordan, for Egypt, for Qatar, for Oman.
Coming up, more with Governor Mike Huckabee from Jerusalem, including details about his new TBN program. Stick around.
Israel faces growing threats on all sides. Hezbollah, ISIS, Iran, and Hamas never cease their attacks. But God has raised Kufi up at this moment in history to stand between Israel and those who seek to destroy the Jewish state.
Israel's enemies are on the move. As dark clouds gather on the horizon, tell the world you proudly stand with Israel. Be a courageous voice for biblical unity and moral clarity when you join Christians United for Israel. Show your love for the people of Zion with this beautiful symbol of unending support for Israel.
Wear the pin and join Kufi, a movement of over 3.5 million defenders of Israel. Call the number on your screen or visit kufi.org/pin to receive your free pin that will show your proud support for the special bond between Israel and America.
Governor, you touched on some of the things at the UN. Can you talk about the troubling diplomatic assault against Israel to deny the Jewish presence on the Temple Mount on the eve of Hanukkah, no less, at the end of the Obama administration? Talk about those diplomatic efforts to delegitimize Israel.
I think it's very important. Every time I bring a group here, I always point out that the UN headquarters in Israel sits upon the Mount of Evil Council.
That's right.
And I think what an appropriate location for the UN to be.
But God has a sense of humor.
He does have a sense of humor. I wish more people did.
Yes.
Here's, I think, the summation of the UN. They make no rational decisions anymore. Yeah. When you put people like Iraq and Russia in charge of human and humanitarian efforts, I think you make it a laughing stock.
Yeah.
And they have put totalitarian nations that are misogynist and anti-woman and violate human rights across the spectrum. They put those countries in charge of the very things that they're most guilty of violating. Yeah. And I really think the best thing we could do with the UN, and I know this is rather bold view, get some jackhammers, cut that thing off right around, the entirety, float it out into the East River, and ask anybody who would like to host it to come pick it up and tow it away and have at it.
Governor, I think many of our viewers would agree with that sentiment. Hey, let me ask you, we have an uptick in anti-Semitism around the world.
Yeah.
It's a scary thing, including in Europe in particular. Why is it so important in these dangerous times for Christians, for followers of Jesus, to stand with Israel and the Jewish people?
People need to realize that whatever target is placed on Jews will ultimately be placed upon Christians. There were more hate crimes against Jews. In fact, it was right at 80% of the hate crimes in the most recent FBI statistics in America that were directed toward Jews. 14% against Muslims, and the rest of it was everyone else. So the number one target when people want to talk about hate crime, it's not Muslims, it's not even Christians, it's Jews. But let's never forget that what is coming to the Jew today is coming to the Christian tomorrow. And we need to realize that the Holocaust, which was targeted largely to Jew, also targeted many Christians if they had any support for the Jews or for other reasons, if they just didn't support the genocide of the Nazis. Yeah. So it's vital that as believers, we recognize who our friends are, who our enemies are, and we stand against all of the forms that try to destroy a nation that gives people a vote, that gives women rights, that allows men and women to have equal access to education and health care, that protects the rights of even the people who disagree with them.
Governor, I saved the best for last.
Okay.
Word is that your great show that you had on Fox News for years is moving here to TBN. This is exciting news. Can you tell us more about it?
It's going to be a positive, uplifting show. It's going to be fun. We'll talk about issues, but not in a harshly partisan way, but in a practical, non-ideological way. But we're also going to tell the great stories of people who are the real heroes of our world, people you never hear about on the front pages of the paper, but they're going to be front and center in the kingdom of heaven for having done great things for other people in a sacrificial way. The Good Samaritans of the world, if you will. Yeah. We're going to call them Huck's heroes, and we'll look at them. We're going to have music and fun.
You might play a little bass.
You know, if I can find a group of musicians who are bold enough to let me play. Normally, what people used to say about my playing on the Fox show, they said, I saw you playing with Willie Nelson. Gee, I saw you play with Leonard Skinner or, you know, even Def Leppard. And I didn't know you were that good. And my answer was always an honest one. I'm not that good, but it's my show. What are they going to do? Tell me I can't? So, yeah, I expect to play a few bass lines with some guests.
Governor, this is exciting. We can't wait to see it here, only on TBN. And hey, maybe we get with some Israeli musicians here.
Why not?
Who knows? Who knows? I expect you will be back, and on the show you'll be talking Israel and this issue as well. Governor, it was great. We'll see you soon here on TBN on a regular basis. God bless you, Governor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Really appreciate it. Thanks again to Governor Mike Huckabee for joining us in Jerusalem. And be on the lookout, folks, for his brand new weekly show coming exclusively here to TBN very soon. If you love the Governor's Fox News show, you are going to love his new program only right here on TBN. Well, up next, hear the harrowing story of the ISIS genocide of Christians in the Middle East from a man who has seen it firsthand. You will not want to miss this. Don't move.
With over 3.5 million members, Christians United for Israel is the largest pro-Israel organization in America. And for Zion's sake, we will not remain silent. We won't stand for the lies and political attacks that threaten Israel's safety and the future of the Jewish people in their God-given homeland. We want you to join us in this sacred movement.
The Jewish people are not alone. Christians United for Israel, I want to thank you for standing up for Israel. I want to thank you for standing up and being counted. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Israel needs you to take a stand. Join Christians United for Israel. Make your voice heard and be remembered as a defender of Israel, the apple of God's eye.
Welcome back. He was born and raised in Britain, but Canon Andrew White is better known as the Vicar of Baghdad for his incredible work with the persecuted Christians of Iraq. He's had his life threatened by ISIS and has lived for years with MS, but that has not stopped Canon White from traveling to some of the world's most dangerous regions to give voice to the voiceless. I sat down with him recently at Patrick Henry College near Washington, D.C. to discuss his amazing work and the persecuted church in the Middle East. Take a look. You have been on the ground, Canon White. You were the Vicar of Baghdad for many years. You're on the ground. You're with the Iraqi people. Can you talk about some of the horrific effects of that ISIS onslaught in Iraq, in the cradle of Christianity, birthplace of the faith?
A lot of the Christians, many of my community, they fled back to their homeland. And their home was actually Nineveh, the place where the miserable evangelist came by submarine.
His name was Jonah.
Yeah. And my Yonah, St. Jonah, is very big in the Iraqi Christian community. Jonah is one of the biggest people, Jonah, Daniel, and Ezekiel. They fled there because they thought it would be safer than Baghdad. And the first place ISIS went to was the Christian city of Nineveh. Nineveh is basically Mosul. Yes, we hear about the backlash and what the army and the US forces are even doing to try and cover Mosul. But it is Nineveh that most of the people are attracted to.
Great biblical significance, like you said.
And so much heritage and great archaeological and architectural things, all been destroyed. And then the people fled Nineveh. I said, I will not leave you, don't you leave me. But then I was made to leave. They all left their lives and went to Nineveh. And then I went to Jordan. And when I arrived in Jordan, suddenly all my own people were coming to Jordan. They were fleeing Nineveh. And in Jordan, we now have established a very big, vibrant Iraqi community with a school, a clinic, a relief program, food aid, water, healthcare, education.
Tell this American Christian audience what is happening to their brothers and sisters in Christ in the Middle East right now as we speak.
So many of our people have been massacred, killed, their homes destroyed, their businesses destroyed. See, the Christians were the intellectual elite. They were the key leaders of the nation. And suddenly they have lost everything. A great friend of mine was the professor of endocrinology in Mosul. His home has been destroyed, his cars have all been taken, everything he worked for, his hospital, clinic, all blown up. They have nothing.
Murdered, tortured, enslaved by ISIS, by the jihadists. Is there any intention or any desire, Canon White, for those Iraqis, some of those Iraqis who fled, to, if ISIS, God willing, is cleared out of Iraq? Or
they will never go back. They all say, I haven't met one Iraqi who has said they're willing to go back. What they suffered and what they endured was so terrible, they will never, ever return.
And this included young children. I've heard some of your stories, Canon White. These are first-hand accounts you're giving us of your contacts, your friends, your family members on the ground.
I have 7 adopted Iraqi children, only 2 English children, 7 Iraqi children. So many of these people are my people. The Voice of the Martyrs came to visit us one week, and they could not believe how happy everything was. They came to the church and they said, this is the happiest church that we have ever seen. And they said to one of my adopted daughters, how can you be so happy when you've got rockets flying over and bombs going off and your people being blown up? And she turned round to them and said, when you've lost everything, Jesus is all you've got left. So we had lost everything, but not Jesus. He was always there.
Folks, what an honor it was to interview Canon White. He is an inspiration, and God has used him mightily to touch millions of lives. Well, up next, my final thoughts on what Iran's dangerous moves in the Middle East mean for Israel and for you. Stick around.
Long before he was the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence was a friend to Christians United for Israel. Now, he's helping us make Israel stronger and her people safer.
Pastor John Hagee, I thank you for your leadership on behalf of this nation and the Jewish state of Israel. And today, through Christians United for Israel, more than 3.3 million believers have raised their voices, have not been silent in support of Israel. And you can be heard in every city and town across America and in every office on Capitol Hill. And rest assured, the man down the street at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue hears you too. I have faith that with God's help, and with the men and women gathered here, the best days for Israel and for America are yet to come.
Don't miss next year's summit. Join the movement and register now for the 2018 CUFI Washington Summit.
And welcome back. We talked earlier in the show about Iran's attempts to surround Israel on all sides and squeeze it, literally, like a vise, wiping it off the map. In fact, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has vowed repeatedly to do just that. He's promised that Israel will not exist within 25 years. Now, Khamenei is not the first tyrant to make such a threat towards Israel, and sadly, he probably won't be the last. But, unfortunately for the Ayatollah, history has not been very kind to those who curse Israel and the Jewish people. Do the roll call, folks. Pharaoh, the Philistines, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, Haman, the Greeks, the Romans, the Ottomans, the Nazis. I could go on and on. All of them persecuted Israel and the Jewish people, and all of them wound up in the ash heap of history, where they will one day be joined by Ayatollah Khamenei. Yet against all odds, Israel not only survives, it thrives. Folks, the God of Israel meant what he said in the book of Genesis chapter 12, when he told Abraham, "I will bless those who bless you, and those who curse you, I will curse." History bears that out. Our team at Christians United for Israel is a Genesis 12 organization, and we want you to join our movement. You see the information on your screen, so come and be a part of what God is doing in the world today. We live in Bible times. Well, thanks for joining us this week on The Watchman. Until next time, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace.